Everything changed with one quiet decision. Behind the regal walls of Buckingham Palace, a ripple began that no one could ignore. Prince William, known for his restraint and calculated diplomacy, made a move so unexpected that it left royal insiders stunned and traditionalists scrambling for answers. By approving a formal title shift for James, now officially recognized as the Earl of Wessex, and quietly setting the stage for Lady Louise to potentially follow, the heir to the throne shattered a long-held code of silence around royal succession strategy. It wasn't just a gesture. It was a statement, a sharp deviation from the monarchy's current path, and a pointed challenge to King Charles's vision of a leaner, more minimal royal family. The impact was immediate and impossible to ignore. Palace corridors buzzed with whispers. Commentators from London to Sydney tried to decode the meaning. Was this a rebellion in disguise? A soft power play from a future king seeking to reshape the House of Windsor before even wearing the crown? Or was it, perhaps, a desperate maneuver to secure the monarchy's dwindling public trust by bringing younger, more grounded royals to the forefront? Whatever the reason, William's move signaled one thing clearly. The next generation was no longer content to wait in the shadows. Royal watchers had long speculated that Lady Louise and James would remain on the sidelines, symbols of a quiet, noble upbringing, unburdened by the public duties that once defined royal adolescence. But William's decision rewrote that future overnight. By elevating James and positioning Louise for greater visibility, he didn't just alter to their lives, he altered the monarchy's very trajectory. It marked a return to legacy building, not through opulence or spectacle, but through loyalty, quiet service, and carefully chosen symbolism. It was also a rare moment of William stepping out of his father's shadow and challenging the idea that royal relevance could be sustained by shrinking the institution. To many, this move felt like a tectonic shift. For decades, the royal family had operated like a well-oiled machine, titles passed down like heirlooms, roles dictated by birthright and proximity to the throne. But this was different. It wasn't just about lineage. It was about merit, trust, and timing. And the timing was no coincidence. With King Charles's health drawing more attention and senior royals aging and stepping away, William was filling a void and doing it on his own terms. But the move left a lingering question. In its wake, why now? Why these two? What did Prince William see in James and Louise that made him believe they were ready to carry the weight of royal duty? And perhaps more importantly, what does this unexpected spotlight mean for the future of the monarchy, an institution once defined by tradition, now navigating an era of unpredictable transformation? But before we understand the impact, who exactly are these two royal teens the world is now watching? She was never meant for the spotlight, but now she can't avoid it. For most of her life, Lady Louise Windsor existed in the shadows of royalty, hidden behind palace walls and protected by a vow her parents made the moment she entered this world. But fate had other plans. Her story began not with ceremony or celebration, but with chaos. Born prematurely through an emergency cesarean after her mother, Sophie, suffered a placental abruption, Louise's entrance into the world was nothing short of a miracle. Her father, Prince Edward, wasn't even in the country. He raced back from Mauritius upon hearing the terrifying news, arriving to meet his fragile newborn daughter fighting for her life. That fight, however, would define her. From the beginning, Lady Louise was different. While others were groomed for the public eye, she was shielded from it. Her childhood was carefully constructed, deliberately quiet. No flashing cameras, no royal obligations. Her parents chose normalcy over nobility, keeping her far from the frenzy that consumed so many young royals. She attended ordinary schools. She walked halls without guards. She wasn't raised to wave, pose, or perform. She was raised to think, to feel, to grow. And that simple choice would one day give her the kind of strength the monarchy hadn't seen in years. But the silence that surrounded her wasn't emptiness, it was intimacy. And no relationship shaped her more than the one she shared with her grandfather, Prince Philip. Unlike the ceremonial ties that bind most royals, theirs was forged in passion specifically, a love for carriage driving. It wasn't just a shared hobby. It was their bond, their language, their legacy. When Philip passed, Louise didn't just lose a mentor, she lost her closest ally in a world she never asked to be part of. And yet, when the time came, she didn't crumble. She carried him forward. She inherited his ponies, his carriage, and with it, his discipline, his elegance, his quiet strength. That same grace echoed during the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. As she stood among her cousins, guarding her grandmother's coffin during the vigil of the princes, the world saw something it had never truly noticed. Before, Louise wasn't just present. She belonged. Her poise wasn't rehearsed. It was real. A young woman who'd known loss, duty, and legacy, not through spectacle, but through service. And then came the moment that shocked royal watchers more than any tabloid scandal. She took a summer job at a garden center. No title, no press, just hard work, soil, and humility. It was a move so unexpected, it captured headlines across the world. Here was a royal Queen Elizabeth's granddaughter watering plants and lifting bags of compost. Not for publicity, but for purpose. And people loved her for it. She was real. She was grounded. She was everything the monarchy desperately needed, but never saw coming. When Louise began her English literature studies at the University of St. Andrews, the same place where Prince William met Catherine, speculation grew. Was this coincidence or choreography? But Louise never played into the fanfare. And when she joined the University Officers Training Corps, whispers turned into questions. Was she preparing for leadership? Military service? A formal royal role? Because one thing was clear, Louise wasn't just stepping into adulthood. She was stepping into destiny. But while Louise's quiet strength captures hearts, her younger brother's journey is just as revealing. He was born 8th in line to the throne and now holds a title that wasn't meant for him. From the moment James entered the world, the expectations that typically accompany royal birth were quietly set aside. His parents, Prince Edward and Sophie, made a deliberate and controversial decision. He would not be a prince. Instead, he would be known as Viscount Severn, a name that paid tribute to Sophie's Welsh heritage, not his place within a centuries-old dynasty. That choice signaled something rare in royal circles: restraint. James would not be defined by status or spotlight, but by the freedom to grow without the crushing weight of a crown-shaped destiny. For most of his childhood, James lived in near anonymity. No royal tours, no grand announcements. He attended normal schools and was raised in a home where duty was present, but never imposed. His parents understood the damage that unrelenting public scrutiny could inflict. They chose a different path, one lined with education, curiosity, and quiet confidence. But time doesn't stand still, especially in a family where change comes dressed in tradition. Slowly, without fanfare, James began to emerge. His first public appearance came in 2016, during the Trooping the Colour, where he joined the royal carriage procession. It was subtle but symbolic, the silent introduction of a boy the world had nearly forgotten. As the monarchy began facing a future without Queen Elizabeth II, James's role, however unintended, began to evolve. By 2022 and 2023, he was no longer simply the youngest royal on the sidelines. He was a visible presence at key events: the Platinum Jubilee, King Charles's coronation, and the funeral of his great-grandmother. But it was the vigil of the princes that transformed perception. At just 14, James stood beside his sister and cousins in solemn silence, guarding the Queen's coffin. No theatrics, no ceremony, just stillness, strength, and a sudden realization he wasn't a child anymore. He was a Windsor, and he was ready to carry its weight. That readiness was formalized when his father, Prince Edward, was granted the long-awaited title of Duke of Edinburgh in 2023. The moment that happened, the title of Earl of Wessex passed to James. A name his father once chose from a movie script now belonged to a teenager who had never asked for the responsibility, but bore it with dignity. Unlike his cousins, James didn't inherit the HRH style at birth. But in December 2025, when he turns 18, the decision will be his. Does he embrace the title and everything that comes with it? Or does he remain in the shadows, loyal but unseen? The answer may redefine the future of the monarchy. Because James represents something the institution desperately needs: a new kind of royal. Humble, disciplined, observant. Someone who didn't chase the spotlight, but earned it through silence. But such a story begs an even deeper question. Why did their parents choose this unconventional path at all? And what does it cost to reject a crown? She could have raised a princess and a prince, but she chose freedom over prestige. At a time when the monarchy clung tightly to tradition, Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, made a decision so unconventional it nearly split public opinion. She and Prince Edward had every right, by blood, law, and legacy, to style their children as Her Royal Highness Princess Louise and His Royal Highness Prince James. But they refused, not out of rebellion, not out of arrogance, but because they understood what the crown so often forgets: that children should first be children, not symbols of an ancient order. In a family where expectation is a birthright, Sophie's defiance was more than symbolic, it was a quiet revolution. She knew the cost of royal life, the endless scrutiny, the public dissection of private moments, the burden of image over identity. And she vowed her children wouldn't grow up with their names etched in glass, visible to all but protected by none. Instead, she gave them something few royal offspring have ever known: the right to live without being watched. Louise and James were raised in the quiet lanes of Windsor, not the gold-plated corridors of public life. They weren't paraded for headlines or groomed for tabloids. They were taught humility, not hierarchy; modesty, not monarchy. Their schools were normal, their friends everyday, their values unshaped by the weight of privilege. Sophie ensured their world was wide, not walled in by titles. And that decision, one of restraint in a family known for grandeur, set a precedent no one expected, yet many would come to admire. Queen Elizabeth II, the keeper of royal constancy, could have resisted. But she didn't. Privately, she respected Sophie's judgment. The Queen had seen generations swallowed by royal obligation, some rising, some shattering. And in Sophie, she saw something rare: a mother who valued character over ceremony, a woman who knew when to stand beside tradition and when to step away from it. The Queen's silent endorsement said more than words ever could. And while Sophie stayed away from headlines, the impact of her choice grew louder. The public began to see her not just as a working royal, but as a mother first, one who sacrificed status to protect sanity. She didn't raise heirs, she raised humans. And in a world where monarchy often feels distant, Sophie became quietly relatable proof that compassion and crown don't have to be opposites. But time doesn't freeze, even for the most well-intentioned choices. Louise is now a woman. James stands at the edge of adulthood. The silence that once protected them has cracked. Prince William is stepping forward, and with him, a new royal strategy is taking shape. And now, everything Sophie fought to preserve, freedom, privacy, simplicity, is at risk of being rewritten. With one move, Prince William broke with his father's vision and made his own. As King Charles quietly battles mounting health challenges behind palace doors, his eldest son is stepping into the spotlight with the weight of the monarchy already pressing down on his shoulders. But unlike his father, William isn't following a playbook written by centuries of tradition. He's rewriting it. And the shift isn't subtle. It's seismic. In the royal court, where every move is usually calculated and cautious, William's decision to elevate Lady Louise and James, the Earl of Wessex, into more formal royal roles was a defiant departure from what King Charles has long championed, a slimmed-down monarchy. That vision, Charles's dream of a leaner royal family with fewer titles, fewer duties, and less public expenditure, was born from a modern instinct to preserve relevance. But William saw the cracks forming. With Prince Andrew disgraced, Harry and Meghan estranged, and other senior royals aging, the once sprawling lineup of working royals has become alarmingly thin. William understood that without fresh faces rooted in integrity and humility, the monarchy risked collapsing under its own isolation. And so, he made a bold move, one that his father had deliberately avoided. He approved a title change for James, formally acknowledging him as the Earl of Wessex, not just in name, but in purpose. This wasn't about vanity. It was about vision. William saw in Louise and James something rare: loyalty without ego, duty without entitlement. They weren't seeking the spotlight. They were simply prepared if it ever found them. And now, under William's emerging leadership, they may be asked to serve not just as relatives of the crown, but as active, visible pillars of a new monarchy, one that values grace over grandeur, grit over glamour. Royal commentators were divided. Some hailed it as a necessary and overdue evolution proof that William is willing to lead with strategy, not sentiment. Others saw it as a challenge to his father's authority, a quiet rebellion dressed in tradition. But regardless of the analysis, one thing is undeniable. This move shifts the ground beneath Buckingham Palace. It suggests that titles in the future may not simply be inherited, they may be earned. That who you are, how you serve, and what you represent could soon matter more than the accident of birth. And if that's the future Prince William envisions, then it's one where the monarchy is not just surviving, but being reshaped from within. A future in which the next generation isn't confined to the shadows, but invited into the light so long as they're ready to stand tall in it. But how did a single movie inspire the title Earl of Wessex, and why does it still matter today? This royal title didn't come from tradition, it came from Hollywood. In a monarchy built on centuries of protocol, it was one of the most unexpected choices ever made by a royal. In 1999, when Prince Edward married Sophie Rhys-Jones, the world waited for the Queen to bestow upon him a grand dukedom, as she had done for her other sons. But instead of following the script written by royal bloodlines, Edward took inspiration from an entirely different source: Shakespeare in Love. After watching the film, he became captivated by a character named the Earl of Wessex, a nobleman with gravitas and quiet command. Something about that name struck a chord, and he asked the Queen for something no royal had ever requested before a title plucked from fiction. To the astonishment of many, Queen Elizabeth II agreed. It was a rare break from royal convention, a decision that revealed not only her flexibility, but also her trust in Edward's vision for a different kind of royal life. By granting the title Earl of Wessex, the Queen allowed Edward and Sophie to carve out a more discreet space within the monarchy, one that valued service over spectacle. They would not be the showpieces of the royal brand. They would be its backbone. And in that quiet, they built something far more lasting than tabloid fame. That single title became more than just a name. It became a symbol of royal recalibration. It allowed Edward and Sophie to raise their children with dignity and privacy, away from the suffocating expectations of royalty. No Prince Edward and Princess Sophie. No immediate dukedom. Just the Earl and Countess of Wessex, steady, loyal, and loyal to their roles, not their headlines. When King Charles finally granted Edward the Duke of Edinburgh title in 2023, a long-anticipated passing of the baton from their late father, Prince Philip, it set another title shift into motion. The Earl of Wessex title didn't vanish. It passed on to Edward's son, James. And just like that, a title born from a movie scene became a bridge between royal generations. But the symbolism didn't stop there. It marked a quiet strength within the monarchy, a lineage built not on loud declarations but on duty carried out behind the scenes. Now, with James holding the name and Louise stepping closer to prominence, this once unusual title may carry more weight than anyone ever imagined. Now that James and Louise are in the eye spotlight, how does this reshape the entire monarchy's direction? This isn't just about titles, it's about who will define the crown's future. For centuries, the British monarchy was governed by a single, unshakable principle: bloodline equals destiny. But now, with King Charles seeking to reshape the institution into something leaner, more efficient, and more aligned with a modern world, that principle is being tested. The monarchy Charles envisions is one of minimalism, fewer working royals, fewer public expenditures, and fewer ceremonial distractions. Yet in choosing to trim the royal tree, he's created something he didn't anticipate: a void, one that is rapidly becoming impossible to ignore. The exits of Prince Andrew, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, have left deep cracks in the royal foundation. Once major public figures, their departures weren't just personal, they were structural. Suddenly, there are fewer hands to carry out royal duties, fewer faces at state events, fewer voices to connect with the public. And as these absences grow more apparent, the question looming over Buckingham Palace is simple, yet urgent. Who will step in? Enter Lady Louise Windsor and James, Earl of Wessex, once raised in near silence, now poised at the edge of the spotlight. With the grace of their upbringing and the weight of new titles on their shoulders, they may hold the key to filling this widening gap. Unlike many of their royal peers, they weren't groomed for grandeur. They were taught modesty, loyalty, and a sense of purpose deeper than ceremony. And in an era where public trust is fragile, that kind of authenticity is rare and powerful. But the debate doesn't end with them. Inside royal circles and among the public, questions swirl about Prince William's own children. Will George, Charlotte, and Louis inherit their roles as easily as they inherit their names? Or will their paths be shaped by new expectations, ones that value service and personal readiness over inheritance alone? The same questions apply to Harry and Meghan's children, Archie and Lilibet, whose royal titles were granted by King Charles, but whose futures within the family remain uncertain. Are they royalty in name only, or will they be asked to stand for something greater? What's clear is that the old system no longer satisfies the modern world. Public sentiment is shifting. People are no longer mesmerized by crowns, they're inspired by commitment. They want to see royals who work, who sacrifice, who serve. They want to know their taxes support more than photo ops. And that pressure is pushing the monarchy toward a transformation unlike anything seen in generations. For the first time, titles may not be guaranteed, they may have to be earned. And at the heart of this change stand two siblings once hidden in the shadows. They were raised to walk away from the crown, but now they might carry it forward. In a family built on titles and tradition, Louise and James were never meant to rule, never expected to serve, and never imagined as central figures in the monarchy's future. But times have changed, and so has the royal family. With scandals unraveling, heirs stepping back, and public trust hanging by a thread, the quiet ones, the ones no one paid attention to, are now stepping into the center of the stage. And with them, they bring a kind of strength that tradition never taught: humility. Lady Louise Windsor stands as a contradiction to everything the monarchy once stood for. Independent, yet deeply connected. Reserved, but fiercely admired. She walks into public events with no royal fanfare, and yet, when she appears, there's an undeniable dignity that silences the noise around her. She has no official title of princess, and yet she carries herself like the only royal who never needed one. There's talk now, serious talk, that Louise could be elevated, perhaps even styled as a duchess in her own right, not because of protocol, but because she embodies what the monarchy is desperately seeking: relevance, grace, and most of all, quiet strength. In a world full of royal noise, she is the calm. Her younger brother James, the newly titled Earl of Wessex, isn't loud either. He doesn't chase headlines. He doesn't play into royal politics. But that's exactly why his presence is making people look twice. Calm, collected, grounded. He represents a different kind of noble not born to lead, but raised to understand. As he nears adulthood, the choices ahead of him aren't just symbolic, they're strategic. Will he embrace the HRH style when he turns 18? Will he follow in his father's footsteps and serve quietly? Or will he step into a more public role? Every decision he makes from now on won't just reflect on him, they'll reshape what it means to be royal in the 21st century. Louise and James are not relics of tradition. They are symbols of transformation. They stand at the edge of a monarchy that no longer rewards entitlement, but service. No longer relies on bloodline alone, but character. Their rise isn't orchestrated, it's organic. It's real. And perhaps that's why the public is paying attention. Because for the first time in years, the future of the monarchy may depend not on the ones born to shine, but on the ones raised to walk away. Prince William's strategy isn't about expansion, it's about elevation. Not of those who demand attention, but of those who quietly earn it. And by bringing Louise and James into the fold, he's not just planning for tomorrow, he's reshaping the very foundation of the crown. If they accept this path, it could signal the start of a new royal chapter 1 that blends duty with humility and legacy with modern purpose. The world is watching. Will they embrace their destiny or choose a different path? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Subscribe to find out what happens next.